Hi, everybody. Welcome to Cascadia Speaks, the Cascadia Now webinar series highlighting the distinct regional and cultural identity of the Cascadia bioregion. I'm Bethany, the Cascadia Now Communications Manager, and on behalf of Cascadia Now, we want to welcome you and thank you for being here. You can view the entire Cascadia Speaks webinar series on the Cascadia Now YouTube channel, and this video will be available there once today's event has concluded. In setting you up to enjoy Cascadia Speaks, on the right of your screen, you'll see tabs for chat room, etc. Chat's going to be the most useful to you, as today's presenter would like to take your questions as he goes. So please type any questions you have at any time in the chat box, and I'll pass it along. Also, you can see at the bottom of your screen, there's going to be some kind of green lights going about how the sound is working, so you know if we're having an issue. Those aren't working, but if you're having an issue, you'll see those and you'll know that maybe turn your volume, make sure your volume's up or your speakers are working, things like that. It also says we're live down there if you're wondering what's happening. So without further ado, let's get started with Cascadia Speaks, building a comprehensive natural medicine cabinet. Our presenter today is Gabe from Ravens Roots Naturalist School. Gabe is the core instructor for the, I'm going to say some of these words wrong, Gabe, for the Ethnobotany Immersion course, as well as a co-instructor for the Wilderness Survival Fire Making, Permaculture, and Bird Language Behavior short courses. Wow. His two greatest loves in the natural world are plants and birds, and he believes permaculture is one of the only ways we can heal the damage that we've done to this planet. He's originally from the Midwest and honed his skills in northern Michigan, the Northwoods of Wisconsin, and along the Mississippi River in northeastern Iowa. He has certifications in permaculture, design, wildlife tracking, and wilderness ecology, and has taught 4 permaculture design courses. As a core instructor at a wilderness ecology and survival school in Monroe, Washington, he taught short-term survival skills, ethnobotany, and bird language in addition to permaculture. He is passionate about natural medicine and teaching people how to grow their own medicinals with a permaculture system. He regularly goes on short-term survival trips with his peers to hone in on his skills for the short courses, and in his spare time, he frequently birds, goes on plant walks, gardens, and plays guitar/sings. Thanks so much for being here, Gabe.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. This is one of my favorite topics to teach. We actually just got done with a natural medicine making course of one day this past weekend, where we really went into depth in a lot of the topics I'm going to be going over today. A good way to start would be probably what got me into this. I've been making natural medicine for probably about 6 years ago. I got started when my father and my stepmother were both diagnosed with cancer. My dad had prostate. My stepmother has melanoma. She's still battling to this day. I watched them go through chemotherapy and radiation and saw their bodies really get decimated, and instead of healing the body, we were doing damage to tissues in order to kill the cancer cells, and I just thought there had to be a better way. So I came out west. Well, I started studying a little bit while I was still in the Midwest and with some herbalists there, and then came out here and went to school learning herbal medicine in Snohomish County about a little over 4 years ago. And I've been making my own medicine for both myself, my community, my parents, family, and friends ever since. And not only do I enjoy making natural medicine, I'm really passionate about using herbs that we can grow locally and sustainably. A lot of the herbal medicines in the books and in the classes that are taught, both not only here in the Pacific Northwest, but all over the country, have herbs that aren't necessarily local to that region. So it's really important to me that people can go out and easily find these herbs without ordering them from and bringing them in from a long distance and growing them themselves. I grow a lot of my medicines along with my food systems. I'm a permaculturist. So I'll talk a little bit about that as well. And Bethany says if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I like to handle questions right as you have them rather than waiting to the end. So don't worry, you're not interrupting me at all. I actually prefer the questions to be asked as you have them. So let's get started. I always start all of my natural medicine making courses talking about safety first. Natural medicine is very, very powerful. And the same high dosages when you get started can hurt you just as easily as they can help you out. So even when you're using a very safe natural medicine like rose or burdock, I'll talk a little bit about those as we go, always start with small dosages. You may even find that you have an allergic reaction to some herbs. So a lot of books will have recommended dosages, and I'll give you some resources at the end. I always recommend people to start with a little smaller than the recommended dose, just to make sure that your body is getting acclimated to whatever herb that you're using, and then building your way up from there. The second 2 points here are positive identification and learn your poisonous plants. I can't emphasize that enough. We have 2 of the most poisonous plants here in the Pacific Northwest, in the country, even the world, and water hemlock and poison hemlock. They're in the carrot parsley family, the Apiaceae family, and both of those plants can kill you within a couple of minutes. When they're consumed, what it does is it paralyzes your central nervous system and paralyzes your lungs essentially, so you can't breathe and you die through asphyxiation. It happens really, really fast. And these plants are growing right along the roadside, right along our water's edge. And I've not something you want to mess around with. So never go out and harvest anything unless you're 100% positive you know what that plant is before you harvest it. And also, if you know what the plant is, make sure that you're only harvesting that plant. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten salad mixes from a farmer's market where I've found some nightshades and some other poisonous plants in those mixes. So make sure that you're not harvesting other herbs outside of the intended herb that you're going for at that particular time. Also, research herbs and their contraindications. Like herbs like St. John's wort, I'll call Hypericum in this demonstration, doesn't do really well with any over-the-counter prescription medications or other herbs at all. And there's a lot of herbs that are very similar to St. John's wort. So make sure that you're doing your research for the herb that you're using, and using multiple sources, not just one book or one resource on the web. And I'll give you some books and resources at the end of this presentation. Also, instead of getting to know 50 or 60 plants, which I'm going to go over a lot today, if you're just getting started in natural medicine, learn 2 or 3 herbs when you're getting started, and learn them really, really well, where they grow, what their medicinal constituents are, what other plants they grow with, and as well as their medicinal and nutritional benefits. And then the last point is take care in harvesting only what you need. Don't over harvest. What we go by at Raven's Roots and a lot of other schools here in the Pacific Northwest and around the country, a 1 in 20 principle, meaning if there are 20 plants in one area that you're intended to harvest, only harvest 1. I take that a step further and do a 1 in 30. Just so that I'm leaving plants there for not only other people, but for the wildlife and other elements in the ecosystem that are using that plant in any way, shape, or form. Now, there's a lot of medicinal terminology. I picked a few things, just a few terms today that I'm going to be using. I just wanted to go over really quickly before I get into the herbs themselves. so that you understand what I'm saying. Now, this is just a small subset of terminology. A lot of the books that I'll refer you to at the end of the presentation will go into a lot more depth and give you all of the terms that you'll need to know. But I think these 10 or 12 here are going to be a good start. So an analgesic is going to relieve pain. Astringent, think of that as when you put something in your mouth that's really bitter and makes you pucker up. So an astringent causes your tissues to tighten. We use it a lot for wounds and inflammation to bring that inflammation down and to tighten the skin. Carminative, most mints are carminative, which means that they help the body expel gas, which is a lot of times the cause of nausea and a lot of gastrointestinal issues. Diaphoretic is probably one of the most important terms that I'm going to talk to you about today. It's not one that we use a lot here in Western medicine. What it does is it promotes perspiration. So a lot of times when we have the cold and flu, we talk about giving the body, boosting our immune system. But a lot of times we need to sweat that out. A lot of cultures, they have sweat lodges. They'll go and sit in the sauna in addition to taking immunostimulants to sweat those toxins and to release them out of the body. And essentially, diaphoretic is just doing that. Think of it as you have the thermostat set in the house to 100 degrees or 95 degrees, and it's brutally hot. You're not going to lower the temperature just by turning down the thermostat. You have to open the windows and let that heat out. So that's essentially what diaphoretic herbs are doing. A diuretic sounds a lot like that. A lot of people get these two confused. Essentially makes you urinate. One of our most popular diuretics that we use in the Western world here is coffee. An expectorant helps you expel mucus from the lungs. Hemostatic is going to help you stop bleeding, mostly used for cuts. Mucilaginous herbs are used for soothing, both cuts and inflammations. We'll go over quite a few of those. Nervine, a lot of calms the nerves, the central nervous system. And let me actually go back. I just went a little bit too far ahead. Sedative. Most nervines are also sedative in quality and in their properties. And finally, a tonic. Tonics are probably one of the most important things that I could talk to you about today, because as well as nutrition, which I'm not going to go into in depth, but tonics are preventative herbs that we take mostly in water-based medicines to strengthen your immune system, your urinary system, to your central nervous system, to prevent disease and ailments. Now, again, this is just a small subset of terminologies, but I figured that these few terms here will help you understand a little bit of what I'm talking about as we move through the presentation. So now let's get into the types of natural medicine. First, we have tinctures. Tinctures are essentially extracts. So either alcohol, apple cider vinegar, or glycerin are three of the popular solvents that we use to extract the herb. I'll go over those in a second. Those are administered orally and some topically. Salves are herbs that are extracted in oils, and then we'll use a wax, typically beeswax, to solidify that so that it could be applied topically to a wound or a rash or skin disorder. Poultices are what we use out in the field. That's just basically crushing the herb, either chewing it in your mouth or crushing it with your hands and applying it topically to the wound. Teas, infusions, and decoctions, those are the water-based medicines that I was talking about, and the tonics. I'll go over those in just a minute. Syrups are essentially decoctions that have honey added to them. Those are great for kids. I'll talk about those at the end, as well as the lozenges. Those are mostly mucilaginous herbs that are soothing, used for sore throats and things like that. So let's start with tinctures. So you're gonna, whenever you start getting into making tinctures, you're going to hear the word menstruum. What is a menstruum? A menstruum is essentially a solvent used to extract the medicinal constituents or the medicinal components of the herb. And we use three. The first is grain alcohol. I always recommend my students to start when they're just getting going with natural medicine to use either an 80 proof or a 100 proof grain alcohol. You can use the cheap vodka, it doesn't matter. It's just being used to extract the medicinal constituents from the plant. So if I'm using fresh herbs, I'm going to, let's say I have a quart mason jar. I'm going to fill that quart mason jar all the way to the top, leaving about an inch of space if I'm using fresh herbs. If I'm using dry herbs, I'm going to fill that quart mason jar about halfway full, and then fill it all the way to the top with the grain alcohol, either the 80 or 100 proof. Vodka is typically what I use. And I'm going to cap it. Once I've filled it, I leave about an inch of headspace at the top. And I'm going to shake that once a day, keep it in a cool, dark place for about a week. And I'm going to let that extract for 6 weeks. I only shake it for 1 or 2, but I let that tincture extract for about 6 weeks in a cool, dry, dark place. Now, when you're making tinctures for children, you can't give children alcohol. So a really popular menstruum for children is vegetable glycerin. And then the third menstruum that I use, which is only good for flowers and stems. I never want to use apple cider vinegar for roots. But apple cider vinegar is my favorite menstruum to use when I'm tincturing with flowers and leaves. Especially when I'm treating the upper respiratory system. The apple cider vinegar is a tremendous, tremendous upper respiratory medicine. Now, for all three of these menstruums, that extraction time is going to be about 6 weeks is what I'm going to let it sit. Then I'm going to filter out the herbs. And if you see on the left in the picture, those are finished tinctures. I'm going to keep them in dark bottles and keep them out of the sunlight. Now, if you keep them in dark bottles and out of the sunlight, the FDA says that we have to put an expiration date on tinctures, and they say it's about 5 years. But if you're using an alcohol-based tincture is going to be good for just about forever. Apple cider vinegar and glycerin do go bad, but if you are using alcohol, which is why that's my preferred menstruum when I'm not treating the upper respiratory system, it does stay good for a really long time. Apple cider vinegar, I like to replace those every 4 or 5 years. But then again, if you're only making the amount of medicine that you actually need, you won't be keeping it around for 5 years plus. Next type of medicine is salves. So very similar to tinctures. For dry herbs, I'm going to pack the quart jar about halfway full.
Hey,
yes.
Gabe, we have a question. Oh, well, Danielle's question was about why is alcohol preferable for adults, and she said, is the glycerin less effective? But then I think you answered her question about the shelf life. So, but if you have anything else to expand on that.
Yeah, also if I'm tincturing roots, I've found that alcohol is going to extract from really hard substances such as roots or bark from, there are tinctures that we use that aren't roots that are still very hard, like the inner bark from willow. That I'm going to always use alcohol just because it extracts the medicinal constituents from the plant a lot quicker. And let me go right back to tinctures really quick. I'm not going to talk too much about using mushrooms. It's mostly going to be plants here. But if you are tincturing mushrooms, I will talk about one mushroom tincture in this presentation. It's turkey tail. Mushrooms are 3 to 4 weeks. That's how long you have to have the extraction for that particular, for mushrooms specifically. Whereas for plants, again, it's 6. So just wanted to throw that out there. I forgot to mention that when I was talking about tinctures. But alcohol does a better job than glycerin and apple cider vinegar of actually extracting the medicinal constituents from the plant. That's why it's my preferred menstruum. Plus, it's good forever. So, does that answer questions, or let me know if there's a follow up to that, Bethany?
Yeah, I'll let you know, Gabe. Thank you. That's
Okay.
great.
So for salves, instead of using alcohol, glycerin, or apple cider vinegar, we're using oils. The most popular oil used for salves is olive oil, just because it has one of the longest shelf lives. But I'm all about sustainability here. So I've been growing sesame and pressing my own sesame seed oil, and doing sunflower. We're growing a lot of sunflowers here on our farm and our campus, and pressing those as well. Those are two oils that you can make yourself without going to the store and purchasing either grapeseed, avocado, olive. Really, any oil will work, but they are expensive. What I would recommend if you are going to go out and buy your oils, cosmetic olive oil works just as good as the culinary olive oil, and it's a lot cheaper. And you can get a gallon, just to give you an idea, of somewhere between $17 and $20. And if you guys have questions at the end about what are some stores, I'm in Western Washington. I'm actually in Skagit and County, so I know some places in Snohomish, King, Whatcom, and Skagit counties that you can go to get these cosmetic oils, and I'd be happy to share those resources with you. So I'm going to extract the herb in these oils for the same amount of time that I'm going to do the extraction for the tinctures. And then what salve is essentially heating that oil up once the extraction's been completed, and then adding a wax. I almost always use beeswax. I know that there's some other people that do vary in their waxes, but most of my mentors, my teachers, and my colleagues use beeswax for a wax. And let that solidify. And the salves are usually good for about 2 years. But I've recently found that cottonwood salve is a preservative. Rosalie de Fleuret, who is an herbalist that I've followed for years now, she's been an herbalist for about 15 years, and she's up in Twisp in Eastern Washington. And she found about 10 or 15 salves that she created right when she started her journey as an herbalist. And 14 of them were rancid, and one, her cottonwood salve, was just as good as it was the day that she made it. So cottonwood has been found out to be a preservative. So now what I do, especially since a lot of salves are applied topically, cottonwood is a phenomenal skin herb. So I add just a couple of drops to, if I'm making a small batch of salve, of cottonwood oil, to whatever oil I'm extracting and making the salve out of, just as a preservative. And I haven't waited 4 years since I've tried this, but I really trust Rosalie's advice to add a little bit of cottonwood oil to whatever salve that you're doing to increase that shelf life over the 2 years. But if you're not using a cottonwood oil, then 2 years is the expected shelf life of your salves. And there's a picture of my comfrey salve to the left there. Now, I always notice for both my salves and my tinctures that I'm putting a label on that says the date, so I know what that when that shelf life is going to expire. Also, always put the name. When I first got started, I always told myself I'm going to remember what this herb is, and sure enough, time goes by, I don't remember what it is, and then you've spent all this time doing the extraction, making the medicine, and you have to get rid of it. You don't know. Some herbs aren't necessarily safe and to be taking in any kind of quantity or in addition with other herbs. So if you don't know what it is, you almost have to get rid of it. So make sure that you're always labeling with the name, the date, and I always add something similar, especially when I'm making my tinctures. I always add what my menstruum was. Did I use apple cider vinegar? Did I use glycerin or alcohol, because again, alcohol is going to have a greater shelf life than apple cider vinegar.
Hey, Gabe, we have another question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you make your own cottonwood oil? And if so, how?
Yeah, I'm going to go over that in a little bit, but we can talk
Oh,
about that.
great question. Okay, thanks.
Great question. I do make my own cottonwood oil. So cottonwood's one of the first herbs that I harvest in the year, and I do it around early February. Um, I'll wait till after a windstorm, and I'll go to large cottonwood stands. Cottonwoods are riparian, so they grow along rivers and streams. So I'll wait till after a large windstorm, because cottonwoods hold a lot of water in their branches. So in survival, we always tell people never pitch a tent under a cottonwood tree, because those waters hold a lot of, or the branches hold a lot of water, and they fall really easily, even with a slight wind, which is bad for survival, but great for us medicine makers, because we can just go right along a river and just pick the buds. Now, I want the really resinous buds, which I harvest in February. And you know they're good because the buds will just stick to your hand. They'll be just super, super sticky. But you won't see the catkin or the flower coming out of them quite yet. That's happening right about now here in Western Washington. So I harvest my buds in early February, and I put them into my menstruum. And the thing about cottonwood salves, and this is a great segue, is most other salves, the extraction time is 6 weeks. The extraction time for cottonwood buds is about a year, because it takes the oil, whatever oil you're using, a really long time to extract those resins out of the buds. But for preservative purposes, you can just use the cottonwood oil from enough of the preservative is present in the oil after 6 weeks. But if I'm actually making a cottonwood salve exclusively, I'm going to let that sit a year. And when you're using fresh herbs, a lot of them, especially cottonwood, you're going to have to cure, which means that once you have that quart mason jar capped with your cottonwood buds and your oil in it, or whatever fresh herb that you're using, you're going to want to, similar to doing a fermentation, you're going to want to burp that salve, which is open, meaning just unscrew the cap and let whatever water or gases out of whatever oil that you're using. So when I do this, I'll put the mason jar in a bowl or something to catch any of the oil or anything that is projected out of the jar, so that I'm not losing it on the counter or making a huge mess. And you only have to do that. It's very similar to fermentations. Again, you only have to do that for a week or two. Burp your fresh herb oil extraction just for maybe a week or two, and then it should be good to go. And then I just sit my cottonwood salve away for a year, and then use it all up really fast. Cottonwood and comfrey salves, and I'll go over why, are two of my most popular salves. At the school here, we have a community of about 20 people that don't have health insurance or have very poor health insurance, and the school's medicine cabinet is their health insurance. So comfrey and cottonwood salves, they go really quickly around here. Now I want to go into water-based medicines and tonics. So we've all heard teas, infusions, decoctions. What are these? So a tea is an herb that I'll extract the herb in hot water for maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Anything over that is technically considered an infusion. Susan Weed is an herbalist that I admire greatly. This is from her book called Wise Woman Herbal. For infusions, what she does is, for roots, she'll do her infusion for at the minimum 8 hours. So what she'll do is she'll take a quart mason jar, put about an ounce of the herb on the bottom, fill it all the way to the top, and cap it. Cap it is very important, because when we put hot water in an infusion or a tea, that steam, the medicinal constituents, the nutritive components of that tea or infusion are escaping. So I always cap it. So roots I'm doing at least 8 hours, but I always do them overnight. Same thing goes with leaves and stems. That's a minimum 4 hours you want to let that infusion sit. But if I'm ever doing an infusion of roots, leaves, or stems, typically I do them right before I go to bed. And why I found that to be really helpful is in the morning is the one time of the day where your body can where you can really drink water really quickly, chug water. So why not chug an infusion that is either nutritionally beneficial to you or going to tonify or strengthen um, your body in some way, shape, or form? Now, for flowers, they're a lot more delicate. So I only want to do a flower infusion for 2 hours maximum. And berries, even more delicate. Never want to do an infusion for any more than 30 minutes. Now, an infusion is incredibly more potent than a tea. So I don't drink teas as much, but I do drink infusions daily. I'll drink teas when I'm sick or just when I'm cold at night, but the majority of my consumption are infusions, and I'll go over why in just a little bit. The infusions, let me give you a few of the infusions that I do. I take 5 on a regular basis. One is oat straw. It's the actual straw, not the oats. It is a tonic for your central nervous system if you've been stressed out for a long time. It's also very highly nutritive. So I'll gather my oat straw. Basically, I use oats in my garden. I grow oats and peas after I've grown my annual vegetables to build up the soil and add mass to the soil so that I can grow again either that fall again or the next growing season. But I harvest my oat straw late in the fall from my garden after I've grown my annual crops. And let me talk just a second about drying herbs. Never dry herbs out in direct sunlight or in moist places. Make sure that you're drying them in a place that has very low humidity. If you have any humidity or any moisture in the air, you're going to get mold, and you're going to get it really quickly. And never do it in any kind of sunlight, even ambient sunlight. I keep all of my medicine in a cabinet that I can close and keep all light out. And when I'm drying the herb, I try to do something similar. I try to do them in dark rooms that don't have a lot of moisture. I never do those in direct sunlight. So getting back to oat straw, again, I'll put an ounce of the herb in, let that sit overnight, and drink that in the morning when I'm really stressed out or I feel like I'm not getting a lot of nutrition. Oat straw is incredibly high in vitamins A and C, which are 2 vitamins that we need quite a bit of. So oat straw I do about twice a week. Chickweed is my second herb that I make infusions with. I either do that herb fresh because it grows everywhere in the garden. Most people think chickweed is a weed in their gardens and just get rid of it. But I'll take it from you if you don't want it in your gardens. I can always use more. And I'll either put about an ounce of the fresh herb in my quart mason jar or same amount of the dry herb. Fill it with hot water, let it sit overnight. What chickweed does is it helps you absorb nutrients. I can also, instead of ingesting that infusion, if I've got red or inflamed eyes, I can also use that infusion as an eye wash. So just either put it on a rag or just get it on my hands and just rub it all over my eyes. It'll take down inflammation. And chickweed, when you ingest it as an infusion, is also just a really great herb for your skin. Another one I use is burdock. Burdock infusions are absolutely incredible. About 3 years ago, when I was teaching at another school, I got a call from a woman in the Midwest, and her daughter had been in and out of all these different clinics throughout the Midwest for these rashes she was getting on her skin, and they had tried all these medications to no avail. And finally, she just threw her hands up, and she wanted to go online, and she found burdock. And she started giving her daughter burdock infusions, and within a couple of weeks, the rash was just completely gone. Burdock is the best skin herb, and it's also the safest herb that I use in my medicine cabinet. So you don't have to worry about quantities, so much as you do a lot of the other herbs. But it purifies the blood. It's great for the skin, and it's incredibly nutritious. And the fourth herb that I use, so I've got oat straw, just to rehash. I've got oat straw, I've got chickweed, I've got burdock. Another one that I use is comfrey, but I will tell you to do your research on comfrey, because I've done significant research, as have quite a few other herbalists here in the Pacific Northwest. The wild comfrey, which has yellow flowers, which is Symphytum officinale, it is high in an alkaloid that they've found and tested with lab rats that kind of constricts the veins in the liver and causes liver failure. However, there aren't any really instances of this happening to humans that I've seen, and I've gone through a lot of different scientific papers and done a lot of research. I haven't found any. But comfrey was used and ingested as an infusion for thousands of years, and then in the 80s it became illegal to be sold for consumption commercially for some reason. I'm not going to get into the politics of that, but I think a lot of you guys probably know why that may be. But I do advise you to go out and do your own research on comfrey. But I've been taking it every week now for a couple of years. I'll drink a quart. Comfrey is incredibly regenerative. It's a cell proliferant. I feel 100% energized as soon as within just a couple of seconds of taking my first sip of the comfrey infusion. So basically, if your body is fighting off anything, comfrey is a great skin herb. When I take that infusion, my skin is more supple. It increases your upper respiratory functions. Hair feels better. The list goes on and on with comfrey, but I will go back. Do your own research. Don't take my advice. Susan Weed, the herbalist I was talking about a few minutes ago, she's been drinking 2 quarts a week for over 20 years, and so have a lot of other people. But so don't always, but do your own research. And then the last one that I do is elderflower and lemon balm. Those are those diaphoretics when I'm feeling a little lethargic, and I want to get my whatever I feel that's trapped, which I don't take this one as much. I'll take the elderflower, lemon balm whenever I'm around anybody that's got a cold, or I see anybody that's getting sick. Those are two very, very potent diaphoretics that help us get those toxins from our core, and either through perspiration or just getting them and releasing them from our body. Now, when I take elderflower and lemon balm, I always have to take that tea hot. That's not an infusion. That's one of the teas that I drink, because hot water alone is a diaphoretic that allows you to release heat through either perspiration or just doing it in general. So make sure that you're not doing the elderflower and lemon balm as an infusion, letting it sit overnight. And especially flowers, you never want to let flowers sit overnight. You want to do those for 2 hours. But take that as a hot tea. And then finally, a decoction is an infusion where you simmer it on the stove in a wide mouth pan until the volume of the infusion decreases by 1/2. That's how you make syrups for kids, is you turn infusions into decoctions. Now, a decoction is 4 times stronger than infusion. So that's really, really, really potent medicine there. But the reason I use decoctions for kids is that once I've decreased the volume of the infusion to 1/2, sorry about that, guys. I add honey to the decoction, and then that decoction officially becomes a syrup just by adding honey. Some other natural medicines, those are the 3 main ones I want to talk about today without overwhelming you guys. But some other things are poultices. Liniments are essentially tinctures, but instead of using grain alcohol, I'm using rubbing alcohol, but I'm only applying those topically. I'm not ingesting those in any way. Syrups, eye washes, I just talked about. Lotions are essentially salves with an infusion added to it or with water added to it. Lozenges are using honey, bark, and inner barks and infusions. And then oxymels are decoctions using, instead of water, apple cider vinegar. Those are what we use for upper respiratory ailments. So now, finally, what you guys have all been here for. First of all, let me open the floor. Any questions on that? Anything I've gone over so far before we jump into the natural medicine cabinet itself? Anything, Bethany? No?
I don't see anything yet, but everybody's they're a little bit behind, so maybe give them a second to pop in on anything else. I think it seems like the questions that we've had come up are things that you have covered already or will cover. So obviously you're doing a great job of being very thorough, and this is awesome. It's great. So we'll give everybody another second, but yeah, you can probably get into it. The people have been popping in their questions and know they can, so thank you.
Sure. So let's get into what are basically I stayed away from chronic disease or chronic ailments, although they do have stuff for that. I think when you're getting started going for and curing ailments that are not chronic and not you're not trying to tackle viruses that are plaguing the Western world, and just going for simple cures to things that like cold, flu, headaches. Those are the types of things that I'm going to go over today. So headaches are a popular one that I always get, and I have 3 herbs that grow here in the Pacific Northwest that I use for that. The one in the middle, meadowsweet, which is actually a member of the rose family, it was the primary inspiration for aspirin. It has salicylic acid in it. Although willow bark right now is what we use, is my #1 go-to for all headaches that are not migraines. I'll also use willow bark. Remember, I went over the terminology. It's an analgesic, takes away pain. I'll use also willow bark for all types of bodily pain that you can experience, but primarily for headaches. And I harvest the willow bark right about now as the energy is going up into the leaves away from the roots. This is a good time to talk about what part of the plant to harvest at what time of the year. So towards the winter solstice, all of the plant's energy is going down into the roots. The aerial portion of the plant has gone dormant. So whenever I'm harvesting roots, I'm always doing that around the winter solstice, which is just right before Christmas. And I do it on a full moon for the same reason that gravity is pulling the tides in and out. The same thing applies to the medicinal constituents in a plant. The most potent root medicine of a plant is ever going to be is on the nearest full moon to a winter solstice. And I harvest the aerial portions of the plant, the leaves and the flowers, closer to the summer solstice. Now, that's just if you want the most potent medicine that you can get. And however, you can harvest the plant at any time, and it's still going to be incredibly medicinal and probably going to be able to tackle whatever type of ailment that you're trying to use it for when it's harvested at any time. But if you want the most potent medicine, you're going to harvest them at those times. But willow bark, sometimes aspirin makes your stomach hurt or causes nausea. Meadowsweet doesn't do that. So if you have problems with getting headaches when you do take aspirin with nausea, maybe willow bark's not going to be the best thing for you, and meadowsweet is going to be much better. But both of those, willow bark and meadowsweet, have salicylic acid in it, which some people have adverse reactions to. So bunchberry, which is a dogwood family member, it's actually got an edible berry. It's one of the few edible dogwoods that grow here in the Pacific Northwest. I harvest the whole plant, and I use that for people that have adverse reactions to a salicylic acid. So between those 3 herbs, any headache that you're experiencing, you should be able to tackle it with those. But remember, herbalism is about going after the cause, not the symptoms. So you could be dehydrated. Maybe you're having a digestion problem. Maybe if a digestive issue is causing your headache, maybe dandelion might be a little bit better, or just drinking a lot of water if you're dehydrated. And then migraines are a different story. Migraines, the top herb for migraines, really much across the board, is feverfew. It's in the aster family, same genus as tansy, which a lot of us have, tanacetum. Feverfew, I harvest the whole plant and I make as a tincture. And I've seen feverfew work for migraines incredibly. That's a common ailment I see in my community. A lot of people have them. And if you don't have feverfew, Michael Moore writes in his book, Pacific Herbs of the Pacific Northwest, that hedge nettle is really good. Now, I've seen a couple people use hedge nettle for migraines. Michael Moore writes about Mexican hedge nettle, which doesn't grow here. We have Cooley's hedge nettle that grows here, at least in Western Washington. But I've seen that Cooley's hedge nettle work in a couple of different instances. So just kind of wanted to give you another option outside of feverfew. But feverfew is my go-to for migraines. For fevers, when we were talking about the diaphoretics, getting that heat that's trapped in your core, getting that circulation, that heat out through perspiration, yarrow is hands down probably one of the best herbs and one of the most popular herbs here in the Pacific Northwest used for reducing fevers. I use that as a tincture. Elderflower and lemon balm, which is the infusion I was talking about before, as a tea. I have it as an infusion. That's raw. That's a mistake by me. So please change, or in your notes, write elderflower lemon balm tea. It has to be hot. And then I could do the same thing with any mint. All mints, specifically spearmint and peppermint, are diaphoretics. They're good when you're trying to break that fever. For some stomach aches, chamomile. German chamomile is the most popular cultivated chamomile here in the Pacific Northwest. I like to take it as a tea. I grow German chamomile here in my gardens. Fennel seed tincture is great. Fennel's just such a great herb, not only for stomach aches, for acid indigestion, for gas, even for heartburn. Fennel and catnip are my two. I grow lots of them. I also grow them not only medicinally, but in my gardens, they help deter pests because they attract the predators of most of the pests that eat a lot of my food crops. They're called beneficial insect attractors in the permaculture world. Those are two very go-to herbs. And then all mints are carminative. A lot of causes of nausea and stomach aches are due to gas. So all mints are carminative to help you expel that gas from the body and make you feel better. That's why you'll see mints used to settle stomachs a lot of times. So, but the two I grow in my garden primarily and use for stomach aches are both spearmint and peppermint. Now, for upper respiratory viruses such as the cold and flu, Oregon grape is a great understory herb that grows all over our forests in Western Washington. I'll harvest the root in the wintertime around the winter solstice, and I'll scrape the little yellow, once I take the outer bark off the roots, you'll see a yellow substance, and that's berberine. Oregon grape is incredibly, incredibly potent antibacterial that I take when I have the flu. And in fact, I had the stomach flu about 4 years ago, and one of my mentors, and it was right on a really important field trip that I was going on, and I was really down and depressed because I thought I was going to miss it. And she gave me an Oregon grape tincture, and within 2 hours, my stomach flu was completely gone. Lomatium dissectum is an herb that they used to battle the Spanish influenza. This is the most powerful antiviral I've ever seen here in the Pacific Northwest. And it has to be called, it's the specific species, it's Lomatium dissectum. It grows on the west side in dry, rocky areas. That's one of the few herbs that I don't grow here on my farm. I go to the east side of the Cascades and I harvest that in the spring, which I'm going on a trip to do that very shortly. And then finally, I also, similar to what I want to do with colds as well, I'm taking that lemon balm and elderflower tea. Here I got it hot. I got it right. Must drink hot. So in addition to these diaphoretics, for colds, I also want immunostimulants. My two go-to that just grow prolifically here in the Pacific Northwest, and this is the one mushroom I'm going to talk about today, is turkey tail. There's a picture of it to the left, and usnea. Usnea grows on a lot of alder and a lot of our deciduous trees, and I, like cottonwood buds, I harvest the usnea after windstorms, and I tincture them both. So I'll take both turkey tail and usnea tincture to supplement with the diaphoretics that I'm taking whenever I have a cold. But the single, this isn't actually an herb that grows out in the wild, but the best cold remedy I've ever seen is actually raw garlic. You have to actually crush it, and you have to eat it within 10 minutes of when you crush it. When you crush garlic, it forms a compound called allicin, and that is what can destroy that cold virus in a very, very short amount of time. So what I do is I'll take 6 cloves of garlic. I'll crush it up and I'll put it in salsa, and I'll eat chips, or I'll put it in something else. If you can eat raw garlic and not just have your mouth burn up, good for you. I can't do that. So I put it in salsa, and I'll eat all 6 herbs. And then it's very important that you go to sleep right after that and rest. So I'll take a 2-hour nap after those 6 cloves of garlic, and I normally feel better almost immediately when I wake up. It's an incredible remedy. And elderberry, but that's the other herb that I go and harvest on the east side. I do blue elderberry specifically. The red elderberry that grows on the west side of the Cascades has trace amounts of cyanide in it, and I just don't consume that one at all. That's another one that I tell you to go. If you're gonna consume red elderberry, there are herbalists that recommend it. There are other herbalists that say don't ingest it. I fall on the side of don't ingest it. I only use black and blue elderberry for my syrups. And a syrup is essentially, again, if you remember, it's a decoction to which you add syrup to, or honey to, that makes the syrup. Great for kids. Some other upper respiratory herbs that go great here. I talked about lomatium. Elecampane, it's another aster family member. It's a sunflower, if you like sunflowers. I use that herb, great expectorant for the upper respiratory system. Mullein, that's on the bottom left. Mulleins, an amazing upper respiratory herb, especially when you have dry coughs. Using a mullein tincture or tea, if you've got dry coughs, is great. Devil's Club tincture, and as well as colt's foot. All of these herbs grow pretty prolifically here in Western Washington. Now for burns, I want to talk really quickly before I get into this, how to treat a burn. A lot of people, once they do have a burn, they're going to put an ointment or a salve on it right away. I've seen that happen. That's exactly the wrong thing you want to do for a burn. A burn, you want to, first thing you do is you run that burn under cold water. Secondly, you can apply an oil without any wax in it. The reason I don't do salves is because salves contain wax, and wax hold heat. So that's usually the last step of treating burns. Once the heat has escaped, then I'm applying the salves. Now, lavender essential oil and hypericum oil are probably the 2 best oils for that second step of treating burns that you can use. Now, when you use lavender essential oil, most lavender essential oils that you buy in the store are Lavandula augustifolia. And that particular essential oil is not going to inhibit the blistering that happens as a result of getting a burn. You have to get Lavandula officinalis, which grows at a little higher elevation. And at that elevation, it gets medicinal constituents that help to inhibit the blistering that is associated with burns. So only that species of lavender will work. Or hypericum, which is also known as St. John's wort. I just do an extraction of that oil, and I'll place that on burns. Hypericum is something that I can grow locally in my driveway. It grows in gravel driveways. I also use hypericum oil as a sunscreen. So that's why I have it listed first. But Lavandula officinalis, in terms of inhibiting blistering, I've never seen anything do it better than that. You can also apply essential oils to your temples for headaches. But I always recommend being cautious with essential oils because it's not natural. It's really high concentrations of the plant's medicinal constituents, and I try to use them minimally. Now, finally, after I've treated the burn with cold water, the heat's been released, and I've used either hypericum or lavandula. Then I'm going to go to comfrey salve or a plantain salve. They're incredibly good for burns. Solal is also a plant that grows prolifically in our coniferous understories here in the West. Basically, I'll grab and gather those leaves during the summertime and let them dry. And then when I have a burn, I could just either apply them fresh if I'm out in the wilderness, or apply them as a poultice. And a poultice is just, remember, crushing that herb and applying it directly to the burn or to the wound. For muscle pains, I'm going to use arnica, which is a flower which I'm going to harvest during the summer. I go up near Mount Baker and harvest a lot of my arnica during the summer months off of 542. Any high elevation arnica just grows prolifically up there once the snow melts. That's where I harvest most of my arnica. That as a salve for muscle pains works really, really great. So does Devil's Club salve tincture. I just taught a class this weekend. We made Devil's Club salve, and one of my students used it. Was bit by a dog, didn't have any, none of the skin was broken, but the pain was terrible. She used Devil's Club salve, and just within a couple of hours, the pain was completely gone. It's an amazingly powerful herb. Hypericum does the same. I use hypericum specifically for sciatica, back pain. Works really well. And the root of the mullein plant in a tincture is phenomenal for pain as well. Now, for tears and broken bones, I only have 2 herbs. For tears specifically, tore my rotator cuff a few years ago, but any muscle tear, horsetail tea or infusion works great. And you can harvest horsetail pretty much at any stage of growth. Comfrey, I try to harvest comfrey before it goes to flower, and then make a salve out of it. Comfrey is also known as knit bone, which I've seen it heal broken bones. Hey, that's good. Sorry about that, guys. I use comfrey for both tears, but specifically any broken bones. I had a student a couple years ago have a compound fracture, and it healed about a month ahead of time. She was applying comfrey salve on a daily basis. Comfrey is just an incredible herb. You're going to see that in a lot of my remedies for a lot of these ailments. Bleeding and cuts, if I want to stop the bleeding, a yarrow salve, again, not only is yarrow a great diaphoretic, but it stops bleeding just about better than anything. I always carry a yarrow salve with me in all of my first aid kits. Usnea, that same herb that we used for an immunostimulant to boost our immune system, also stops bleeding really, really well, both as a tincture or just applying the herb directly to the cut. Plantain salve, plantain pulls out infection and heals because it's mucilaginous, but what I use plantain for is pulling out infections. Again, I had a student, I think it was 2 years ago, step on a nail during one of our field trips out in the field, and didn't tell me for about 24 hours, and black veins. Once he did tell me, he started to already have the signs of a really bad infection, which are black veins running up the leg. So we just crushed up some plantain, and it could be either English or common. Those are the 2 types of plantain that grow here in the Pacific Northwest prolifically. And we applied that, and within 24 hours, the veins were gone and the infection had been pulled out. Plantain, echinacea is another plant that really pulls out infections really great. But plantain grows everywhere and is the one that I think everyone should use. And cottonwood is what we call nature's neosporin. That's why I grow a lot of it. If I have cuts, I'm applying cottonwood to those cuts. Usually a cottonwood and plantain together. And then for bites and stings, for bee stings, plantain, nothing works better than that. I have nettle tincture down on here because great for bites and stings when it's ingested as you don't ever want to just put nettle on topically, that's going to sting you even more. So I have that as a tincture or a tea. And if I get stung by nettle, since we're on the topic of nettle, there's spores that grow on the underside of the sword fern that if you just rub against the infected area, the sting will go away really quite quickly. So yes, there is a use for Himalayan blackberry, the plant that we love for 2 months out of the year when it is providing us with berries. But in the fall, I go and I gather the roots and I make tinctures out of them, and there is really no better cure for diarrhea. I make a blackberry root tincture for any kind of a gastrointestinal issue. Blackberry is the way to go. Slippery elm, the inner bark, that doesn't grow that well on the west side of the Cascades. That's when I go harvest on the east side. But it's mucilaginous herb. It's soothing. It's that slimy. It's got that slimy nature that soothes. That I make that into a tincture, very effective. And again, plantain again is great for diarrhea. So between those three, all three very easy to find. Specifically, plantain and blackberry. We have lots and lots. Great for that particular ailment. Insomnia. Valerian. Sitka valerian grows prolifically up again at a little higher elevations in subalpine zones. European valerian grows really well in our gardens. That works great for insomnia. Also as an analgesic, it takes away pain. Skullcap is a mint, grows great in our gardens, using that as a tea. That's a sedative. Hops, not only do you use hops to make beer, hops also will help you go to sleep, help take away pain. It's a sedative. It's a nervine. And California poppy, not related at all to the opium poppy. It is sedative and a nervine as well, and grows prolifically all over fields and roadsides and in your garden. All four of these are very, very easy herbs to grow and are very effective. And different herbs work for different people. Valerian root tincture puts me to sleep in about 10 minutes. Other people it doesn't really work with, and skullcap works better. Different herbs work for different people, so always try with small amounts when you start using these, and give different ones a try, see which one works best for you. But between these four, if you do have trouble sleeping, one of them is going to work. For skin disorders and rashes, burdock, we talked a little bit about that. Nettle, infusion or tincture. Licorice fern, which grows on our maples and moss. If you make a decoction of the roots, great for hives. Sometimes I get hives when I change a laundry detergent or something like that. That usually is a cause for me to get hives. And licorice fern works incredible for that. However, if you do have an allergy, nettle, where you're exposed to something that's caused a rash, like a food allergy or something like that, stinging nettle, tea or tincture works incredibly, and it works pretty fast to take down inflammation. It's a wonderful antihistamine. And then for that runny nose, for the people that have grass allergies and just get that runny red eyes type allergies, there's three herbs that I use: goldenrod, either as a tincture or tea, oxeye daisy, or bidens. All three grow prolifically, and at different times of the year. Oxeye daisy comes out first, then goldenrod, and then bidens. So we have all of our allergy medications growing at different times throughout the spring and the summer, which is kind of nice. For toothache and mouth pain, if I'm in a pinch and I can't get to a dentist, bleeding heart grows. It's actually coming up right now. I harvest the roots in the fall, and I make that into a tincture. That takes away mouth pain incredibly. Also, the seeds of cow parsnip as a tincture work really well for mouth pain. But what I will say about cow parsnip, that's a Heracleum genus, it's related to hogweed. If some of you guys have heard hogweed, when you touch it, you get the photosensitivity. Once you're exposed to sunlight, it causes blistering and extreme rashes. There are some pictures running around social media about usually every summer, about somebody that runs in with shorts to a hogweed patch and has tremendous blistering all over their legs. But cow parsnip is in the same genus as hogweed, and you do have photosensitivity issues. So if you are harvesting cow parsnip seeds, be sure not to touch the leaves. And if you do, make sure you have long pants, gloves, or something on. And you don't want to expose yourself to the sun after you do that. Comfrey is for weak teeth. You can also use a strawberry leaf infusion for those of you who grow strawberries in your garden. That also helps for when you're experiencing pain in your mouth from weak teeth or gums. And if you don't want to put mercury fillings in your teeth when you do have a cavity, calendula tincture helps fight rot. Not just take away the pain, but actually get rid of the rot. Elecampane tincture does the same, but I use calendula because it just grows so prolifically in all my garden beds. From infections, for external wounds, I talked about plantain and echinacea. Echinacea is commonly used as an immunostimulant for when people have a cold. People give them echinacea tea. That's misusing this herb. Echinacea is not going to get you over your cold. Echinacea is good to take at the very, very initial onset. It's going to boost your immune system, but is not going to cure you of the cold. I would go with the turkey tail or an usnea tincture and one of those diaphoretics that I listed, either that elderflower, lemon balm, tear infusion, or yarrow tincture instead. Anything upper respiratory, the herb I always suggest is lomatium. And anything urinary system related infections, kinnicknick, which is a understory ground cover, heather that grows up in the mountains, and also pipsissewa. All three are in the same family, and most plants in the heath family are going to be really great for your urinary system. And one herb I didn't put here is usnea again. I've seen usnea tincture or tea basically wipe out a urinary tract infection in just a couple of hours. That's an incredible herb. Kinnicknick is pretty powerful too, but I forgot to put usnea on here. So add that to the urinary system related infection lists. Almost done. Finally, those are the main ones. I only had an hour, so I tried to just hit all the important ones. For stress, motherwort, devil's club tinctures. When you do have stress, I always say to start with wild rose petal tea first. I've even seen wild rose work for post-traumatic stress disorder. And I use rose first because it's incredibly safe herb that you can take with consistency. I listed hypericum or St. John's wort last because when you take hypericum or St. John's wort, it has contraindications with just about every over-the-counter medication. If you have any kind of a psychosis, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, you do not want to take St. John's wort or hypericum. That's one you really have to research and see if it is if it's not going to work in conjunction with whatever medication that you're taking. For sore throat, slippery elm bark, marshmallow root or tincture. Marshmallow is a small shrub that grows prolifically here in the Pacific Northwest. I harvest the roots again in the fall. Great for sore throats. Swollen lymph glands, nothing beats alderbark or cleavers as a fresh tea or tincture. For antifungal, western red cedar grows everywhere here. Turning that into a tincture and applying it topically to either tinea or athlete's foot, whatever kind of a fungal disorder you're experiencing. Also, the roots of sweet cicely, which is another understory herb that grows here, will work for that. And then finally, I have colt's foot tea, valerian tincture, and blue violet tincture. Those are antispasmodics. So if I want to stop a cough from happening, I don't want a cough to expel the phlegm. I just want to stop the cough. Those three herbs are really great. I could also use red clover. I didn't add that as a tea or a tincture. So finally, just want to give you guys some field guides to go off of. First things first, as I did in my first slide for safety, get a good field guide. Two field guides that I use are Plants of the Pacific Northwest Coast by McKinnon and Pojar, Wildflowers of the Pacific Northwest by Turnham and Gustafson, Botany Today by Thomas Alpel. That helps you start to, when you look at a plant, be able to quickly put what family it's in. Because the top two field guides that I listed, it's really quite frustrating to, when you see a plant that you don't know what it is, have to go through a field guide that's 300 pages. What Botany in a Day does is it helps you quickly group plants into a family. So instead of looking through 300 pages to see what a plant is, I'm narrowing that down and only looking through maybe 10 or 15 pages. So that's a great book that I wanted to include there. So the field guides are for identification. Those are the 3 that I would get. For your medicinal guides, I want to put Healing Wise by Susan Weed first, because she only goes through 4 or 5 herbs and goes through them in really heavy detail. Once you go to Healing Wise, Medicinal Plants of the Pacific Northwest by Michael Moore is just an incredible, incredible book. I would get those top 2. They go through just about everything that you need to know. If you're a beginner, Rosemary Gladstar, Her Medicinal Herbs, A Beginner's Guide is a phenomenal, phenomenal book. Also, for beginners, Edible and Medicinal Plants of the West by Tilford's great. And if you want to get into growing mushrooms, Paul Stamets, Growing Gourmet and Medicinal Mushrooms is the best book, bar none, for medicinal mushrooms. And then the websites, Herb Mentor, which is a conglomeration of a lot of herbalists from all over the country. They do video plant walks, they write articles. That's a great resource to just get going on your herbal journey. And also a site that I always give to my students is the Washington Native Plant Society. When you're going on a hike somewhere, go to the Washington Native Plant Society. On the left-hand side of their website, you'll see a section that says plant lists. And a lot of times when you click on plant lists, you'll see the hike that you're doing. Click on that particular hike, and it's going to show you all the plants that have been spotted at that particular location. Then you can cross-reference that with either your medicinal or your field guide, and you're going to get a lot further a lot quicker. But at the end of the day, go out and take a guided plant walk. We do free ones all the time at Raven's Roots. I'll be listing some within the next week here. I'm teaching a natural medicine making class here at Raven's Roots on April 30th again. And we'll offer those every few months. But if you're not in Skagit, Whatcom, or Snohomish, you're down in Oregon or BC, there's all kinds of schools that offer these classes. I would recommend taking it with somebody who really knows what they're doing and can walk you through the process and be there for you as a resource as you have questions. But be safe with natural medicine. It's something that should be respected, and thanks for giving me the time to do this. And if there's any questions, just wanted to open the floor.
Thanks so much, Gabe. This has been awesome. Thank you. I think that like some of our participants have said too, that you were very thorough and covered everything. But hopefully, anybody who's kind of mulling over the end here, they have any questions. You can also you can leave questions or comments. You're going to get an email with a link to the replay of this webinar, and you can leave questions there that will come to me, and I can forward them to Gabe. You can also leave comments on our YouTube channel on the replay on there too. If something comes up later that you're not sure about or not sure what to do, I'll see those. Gabe might be able to see those, and we can get back to you on that stuff too. So please ask questions and help out. Obviously, Gabe is awesome at this and does it even just not just teaching you how to do it, but does it all himself, which is, like he said, you want to make sure you do this kind of stuff with somebody who knows what they're doing, and that's always the best. Someone who practices it is the best way, so it's great.
If you have any questions, feel free to email me directly at info@ravensroots.com, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions. I love this stuff. It's not just my work, it's my life. So I want to see you guys, I want to see people incorporating natural medicines into their lifestyles, and any way that I can help. No questions going to annoy me. Feel free to just shoot me an email with anything.
Great. Thanks so much, Gabe. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you all for attending today too. Like I said, you're going to get an email with the link of the replay, and it's also going to be on the YouTube channel. We've got more awesome Cascadia Now webinars coming up on Friday, April 8th at noon. We have Building a Positive Team Culture that will be specifically helpful to any of you working on forming Cascadia Now chapters or in any project that you're doing in your neighborhood as a team. It's great to know how to keep everybody working together positively, and we've got an awesome expert on that, and that's on Friday, April 8th. And then in May, we're going to have a virtual tour of the Living Bus Project, and we'll have the Living Bus Project Builder for questions. Going to be so cool. That's an awesome tiny house project, and also just an experiment in community building. That's a Cascadia Now project. We're really excited to share that with everybody in the bioregion, even if you're not close enough to see the Living Bus Project in person, which I have, and it's amazing. But I'm excited to share it with you in a webinar too. So make sure you're following us on wherever is your favorite place to be, or an email, and we're using the hashtag Cascadia Speaks for these two, so you can find them easily, so you don't miss out. And I hope you all have a great afternoon. And thank you again so much, Gabe, for being here. Really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thanks for having me. Bye,
Have
everyone.
a great afternoon. Bye.